Hello, and welcome back to the Simulated Trader. My name's Anthony. I've been trading the market for over a decade now, studying structure, behavior, and execution. And this channel is all about understanding that structure because most traders, when they begin their trading journey, they start at the wrong area, and then tuition is just really expensive as they're building their education. So, excuse me, today I'd like to introduce you to a framework that outlines that structure. And I think once you see it, you can't unsee it. So let's jump right in. Last time, I introduced you to the concept that the market itself is an ecosystem, that all of the various markets aren't independent on their own, right? It's not just the Forex market, it's not just the futures market or the indices or commodities or stocks, however you like to look at it. It's all within the market as a whole. That's the ecosystem, right? So in that ecosystem, there are these what I call the four layers of context. So you do start with the ecosystem. That's the highest layer of the market itself. The next layer is environment, and I touched on that a little bit last time as well, and today we're going to get into it a little bit deeper. But I also want to introduce you into the other two layers. The next one would be climate, and then finally the last layer is weather. The whole analogy is based on obviously the planet, as you can tell, but I think as we go along, it'll make sense. So most traders begin at the bottom layer, the weather layer, where without understanding the rest of the framework, everything seems random because you don't realize the external forces that are creating or influencing the weather. So we need to take a step back, and then when we look from the top down, everything else is just going to clear up. Okay. So again, starting up at the ecosystem, right? Everything revolves and exists inside the ecosystem, just like think of the planet and gravity and all that other kind of stuff, right? Everything is contained inside it, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, that's the Forex market, or oh, that's the futures market. No, Forex is an asset class in the market. Futures is an asset class in the market, right? So I hope a lot of people don't aren't apathetic towards those other asset classes, because when you zoom out and you start looking at them, I'm not saying trade in them necessarily, I'm just saying be aware of them, because those classes have an effect because they are part of the same ecosystem. It's all one thing. It's not separated. It's not in isolation. So the second thing, right, the environment. So environment is the entirety of right now. Like, you've probably heard terms like we're in a bear market, we're in a bull market, right? That's the environment talking. Is it a risk on environment, or is it a risk off? Is the market in an expansion, or is it in contraction, right? That's environment, right? And we're going to get even further into this because there's a way that I want to introduce you to looking at interpreting the market, because when you understand what's going on in the environmental level, or layer, I should say, then you understand how it's going to affect the next layer behind it, or downstream, if you will. So again, just high hierarchy. Wow, let's try that again. Environment, or excuse me, ecosystem, environment, climate. Climate. What's climate? Climate is the actual personality of the underlying that you trade. So I hope you've probably heard by now that when you get into trading, you need to study the underlying that you're going to trade for a good little while so you can get accustomed to its personality. You've probably, whether you've identified it this way or not, you may have recognized that certain assets or underlyings, excuse me, they just behave oddly, but it's right for them, right? Certain stocks, they're just methodical the way they move up and down. Indices, you might have the SPX, which is pretty, again, methodical the way it moves up and down. Conversely, you've got the NASDAQ, which is a little bit more erratic. And then you can switch into other asset classes, right? You've got silver. Silver looks like an EKG or an EEG, whichever machine you know what I'm talking about. It's just right? Gold is a little bit more straightforward. I don't want to go methodical, but steady on, and then boom, it'll move. And then you get into Forex and you have the various currency pairs. And again, they're just going to move differently. So you need to study those underlying so you get an idea for their personality. That's what I'm calling the climate layer. Below that is the weather layer. That is actually what's going on in your underlying today. Okay. So the whole infrastructure, for lack of another word, is understanding that it's all one system and it's not just the Forex or just the futures market, blah, blah, blah. It's all one market. And then understanding, hey, we're in a bull environment. We're bullish. Okay. That's not going to change quickly. There's things have to happen that needs, in order for the environment to change, there's a lot of things that have to happen for that environment to change, right? Then you get into the climate of the underlying is understanding its personality, because when you understand how it moves normally, then you're going to recognize that something's off when it's behaving differently, right? And when you can see that, there's opportunity there. And then finally you get into the weather, and then now you're recognizing how things are moving, and then you'll know whether or not today you should be or should not be trading, because again, the weather is the bottom layer of the hierarchy in this infrastructure. And again, that's where most traders start, and they're in what eventually we'll get to is a lake, the lake of the underlying. They're there and they're trying to figure out what's going on because they don't even know that there's three layers above that's affecting what's going on. Okay, so back to environment. Like I said, I want to dig deeper into that. And next time on the Simulated Trader, we're going to start with breaking the environment into four oceans, right? Each one of these oceans is going to identify part of the personality, for lack of another word, of the environment. And when we get through these four oceans, that's going to be kind of our, what I'm going to call our macro read. That as we step back daily and look at the macro read of these four oceans, that's what we're interpreting as far as the environment. What's going on with the environment? Is it this? Is it that? Is it moving this way or is it moving that way? And when we look at that on a daily basis, we're going to understand the narrative going on, so that as we step down into the climate and look at our underlying whatever it is that we're trading, we're going to understand if there's forces at play here. And then we'll step down into the weather layer, and then we'll know whether or not whatever strategies we use align with the market and what's going on. Because honestly, a lot of people, you think strategy and you think combat. You're not combating the market. You either get in line with it or you get run over by it. Okay, so that's why understanding this whole hierarchy is going to put you in a better position so that you can get in alignment with the market, trade correctly, and then be profitable, right? So that's why I titled this particular lesson of this will cut your learning curve in half if you understand the four layers of context before you even decide whether or not it's time to put live capital in play. We'll see you next time.